Understood. This time, I'm starting the story with no relationship backstory, no meet cuties, no traditional setup. You'll get a unique, attention-grabbing opening, something totally different from past stories, and immediately shocking. No introductions, no familiar flow. Just straight into an intense and deeply personal moment, all while staying compliant with YouTube's rules and featuring a whiny male narrator. Part 1. He called me Bud in my own kitchen, and she let him. The sound of my own name came from someone else's mouth. Not hers. Not mine. His. Curtis, right? Hey, Bud, you mind if I crack open this bottle of red? Bud? He said it like we'd been friends for years. Like I hadn't just walked into my kitchen and found him already standing there, barefoot, like he owned the tiles, uncorking a bottle I'd been saving for our anniversary next month. And Lorna? She didn't flinch. She didn't even stand up from the stool. She just looked over at me, chin on her palm, and said, "Don't be weird about it." Weird? The man, a stranger with a chest tattoo peeking through a V-neck and a smug little half-smile like he was starring in some indie film, was holding my wine, using my opener, standing in my house. And I was the one being weird? It had been less than 30 seconds, but something inside me already knew. This wasn't the first time. Not the first time he was here. Not the first time she let him. Not the first time I was the extra in a script someone else was writing inside my life. "You left the door unlocked," she said, as if that explained everything. He got here early and I was still getting ready, so I told him to make himself comfortable. Comfortable. He was whistling. This man was whistling in my kitchen while pouring my wine into the tall glasses we never used because she said they were too pretentious for a Tuesday. I didn't even ask who he was. Something about the way he moved, that casual, practiced ease, told me everything I didn't want to know. So instead I asked, "How long?" Not loudly. Not angrily. Just hollow. She blinked. For half a second, I saw something flicker in her eyes, regret. Maybe. But it passed. Then came the shrug. Long enough to know it's different. Different. That word felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds and landed right between my ribs. He extended his hand like we were meeting at a backyard barbecue. "Jude," he said. "Good to finally meet you, man. Good to finally meet me." I wanted to scream. Instead, I shook his hand. I don't know why. I think part of me wanted to feel how real he was. To confirm this wasn't some nightmare playing out inside my own anxiety. His grip was firm. Confident. No hesitation. I don't even remember sitting down, but suddenly I was in a chair, watching them share a plate of olives like it was a lazy Sunday. He made jokes. She laughed. And I watched a version of her I hadn't seen in months. Light, playful, free. I sat there like a ghost in my own life, wondering when exactly I'd been erased. Then he got up. Said he was going to grab his phone from the bedroom. The bedroom. He didn't ask which room. He knew. He walked there like he'd done it 100 times. And she didn't stop him. Didn't even glance. I stared at her, silent, waiting for something, anything. An apology. An explanation. A sliver of shame. But all she said was, "I didn't want you to find out like this." Like this? Then how? Through a voicemail? A misplaced sock? Or maybe months later, when she decided to leave and said, "It's not you, it's me"? No. No. I think this is exactly how she wanted me to find out. Raw. Unprepared. Cornered by truth and red wine. She reached for her glass and looked at me like I was the one being difficult. "I didn't plan it, Curtis. But I don't feel small when I'm with him. And with you. It's like I always have to apologize for wanting more." That broke something in me. Because she wasn't wrong. I was small. I'd spent years bending myself in half trying to be enough for her. I gave her space, gave her patience, gave her silence when she asked for it. I worked late shifts. I folded laundry. I watched shows I hated. I never once raised my voice. Not even when she started sleeping on the couch because her back hurt. But I never expected this. Not this. When Jude came back, he placed a hand on her shoulder. She didn't flinch. She leaned into it. And that was when I stood up. I didn't say a word. Didn't break a plate. Didn't throw the wine against the wall like they do in movies. I just walked out the front door. And sat in my car for 3 hours, watching the house. Waiting for the lights in the bedroom to turn off. They never did. And that's when I realized. This wasn't the beginning of the end. The end already happened. I just hadn't noticed. Would you like to continue with part 2? Absolutely. Here's part 2 of the original story, written in American English, continuing from the intense and unique part 1. This part is longer, maintains a strong emotional tone, avoids column formatting, and stays fully compliant with YouTube's policies. The style is whiny, introspective, and filled with tension, and it unfolds with new layers of betrayal and psychological pressure. Part 2. The shower was still wet. His razor was in my cup. I didn't sleep that night. Not even a minute. I sat in my car, engine off, watching the window glow like a stage light, flickering slightly as they moved around inside. I couldn't see much. Just the occasional silhouette. The soft curve of her walking past the window. The outline of his shoulder as he closed the curtain. Like they knew. Like they saw me watching and wanted me to see just enough. It was 3 in the morning when the lights finally went dark. That should have been my cue to drive away. To check into some rundown motel or sleep on my cousin's couch. But I didn't move. I just sat there like a statue of who I used to be. Because as much as I hated myself for it, part of me still wanted to believe it wasn't real. That maybe I misread everything. That somehow I'd walk back into that house and find her alone, curled up with a book, waiting for me to join her. At 4:15 a.m., I unlocked the front door and walked into my own home like a thief. Every step I took made my stomach tighter. It was so quiet. The kind of silence that doesn't rest, it vibrates. And that's when I noticed it. The smell. Not perfume. Not food. His cologne. Subtle, sharp, and completely foreign. I stood in the hallway, heart in my throat, and just listened. Nothing. So I walked into the bathroom. And there it was. A second toothbrush, black, resting next to mine in the cup I bought from a roadside antique store in Maine. His razor. His hair gel. His deodorant. On my shelf. Mixed with mine like he'd always belonged there. The towels were still damp. The mirror fogged in the corners. They'd used my shower. Together. I stared at the sink for so long my eyes stopped blinking. The toothbrushes were leaning together, bristles almost touching like they were cuddling. I reached out and knocked his to the floor. Not in a rage. Just because I couldn't stand the sight of it. And then I noticed something worse. A pair of boxers, not mine, tucked into the laundry basket. And beneath them, my favorite shirt, wrinkled and half-wet, like someone had wiped their hands on it. I sat down on the toilet seat and covered my face. That's when I heard it. A creak. Then footsteps upstairs. And voices. Muffled at first, then sharper. Her voice, light and annoyed. His, relaxed, almost smug. I couldn't move. I just sat there listening to them argue about whether to get bagels or make breakfast. They were talking about plans. For the morning. Like this was just any other day. Like I was already gone. And in a way, I guess I was. Eventually, I went back downstairs and stood in the living room like a guest. Everything looked the same, but nothing felt right. I looked at the couch where we used to sit and argue over documentaries. The coffee table where I spilled root beer, and she laughed like it was the end of the world. The rug we picked out together on our first anniversary trip to Boston. Now it all looked staged. Like a memory someone else had moved into. She came down the stairs wearing my hoodie. His socks. I don't even know how I noticed that, but I did. She stopped when she saw me. Not surprised. Just mildly uncomfortable. Like I was an uninvited coworker who showed up too early to the office potluck. You came back, she said quietly, brushing hair out of her face. I thought you might. I didn't answer. What do you say to someone who dismantled your world and left the pieces neatly folded on your couch? He followed her a few seconds later, barefoot, sipping coffee out of my mug. My mug. The one that says #1introvert that she gave me on Christmas as a joke. He looked me dead in the eye and nodded. Morning. Just like that. Like we were roommates. Like this wasn't real. I asked her the only thing I could muster. So, is he living here now? She bit her lip. Hesitated. Then shrugged. Not officially. But kind of, yeah. I looked at her, at the woman who used to fall asleep holding my hand, who used to cry when I made her mixtapes, who used to wake me up just to say she had a dream about us traveling the world. Now she was letting another man live in my home like I had just evaporated. Do you want me to leave? I finally asked. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her silence was more honest than any answer. I walked past her, past him, and grabbed a backpack from the hallway closet. I stuffed it with whatever I could grab, socks, 2 shirts, my wallet, my charger. I didn't take anything sentimental. I think part of me wanted to leave all the memories behind like forgotten receipts in an old drawer. As I opened the door to leave, she said one last thing. I hope you understand. Understand? No. But I will. Eventually. Would you like me to continue with part 3? Absolutely. Here is part 3 of the story, even longer, just as emotionally intense, highly unique, and written in flowing paragraph format. It continues from the moment Curtis leaves the house, diving deeper into the unraveling of his world. The narrative remains introspective, whiny, and packed with intrigue, without breaking any YouTube rules. Part 3. I left without a word, but someone was already waiting for me. I didn't slam the door. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't even look back as I stepped outside. The morning was cruelly beautiful, one of those rare early spring mornings where the air smells like wet leaves and the sun is warm enough to make you believe things are okay. I stood on the front steps of my own home, holding a backpack that felt heavier than it should have, blinking in the sunlight like I hadn't seen it in years. And then I did the dumbest thing I could have done. I sat down on the curb, right in front of the house, like some lost puppy waiting for the past to call him back inside. I don't know how long I sat there. Maybe 10 minutes. Maybe 2 hours. My mind was a haze, looping the same 4 images over and over. Her hoodie, his socks, my mug, their laughter. It was like someone had rewired the universe, and I was the last to find out. I kept replaying the moment she said, "I hope you understand." And each time it hit me differently, colder, sharper, emptier. I wanted to scream, but couldn't find the energy. I wanted to cry, but the tears refused to come. Then I heard the car engine. A slow crawl. Someone pulling up behind me. I turned my head, expecting a neighbor maybe, or a delivery truck. But it was her sister, Marla. She rolled down her window halfway and leaned toward the passenger seat. "You look like crap," she said without a hint of malice, just blunt honesty. That was Marla's thing. She never sugarcoated anything, which is probably why Lorna hated her input on anything remotely emotional. "I guess you know," I muttered. She nodded. She told me. Not all of it. Just enough to make me want to scream into a pillow. I looked at her. "Why are you here?" She texted me. Said you might need a ride. Figured I'd make sure you didn't end up sleeping under a bus stop. I laughed a little. It came out broken. That was the plan, actually. Marla put the car in park and stepped out. She wore a ratty old hoodie and pajama pants. No makeup. No smile. She looked like someone who'd been crying and had decided to take a break from it. She walked over, sat down beside me on the curb, and sighed deeply. "I'm not gonna pretend to get it," she said. "But I will say this, whatever version of her that's in there with that guy. That's not the version you married." I didn't know how to respond. I wanted to believe that. But all I could think was, what if it was? What if that version had always been there, buried under layers of convenience and smiles and birthday cards with recycled promises? "She planned it," I said quietly. "She let it build up until she could replace me cleanly." Marla nodded slowly. "You're not wrong." There was no comfort in that. No relief in being right. Just confirmation that I hadn't imagined it, that this wasn't some wild misunderstanding or emotional overreaction. It was real, premeditated, intentional. "She told me last week," Marla added. "Said she was finally doing something for herself." I thought she meant a solo trip to the coast or therapy. Not this. We sat in silence. A couple walking their dog passed by on the other side of the street. The woman smiled at us like we were a couple too. I almost laughed again. Almost. "Where do you want to go?" she asked after a while. "I don't know," I said honestly. "I can't go to my parents. They'll ask too many questions. And my cousin's in the middle of moving. I might just drive." Marla reached into her hoodie pocket, pulled out a spare key on a neon green chain. "You can stay at my place. I'll be at my boyfriend's all week. Clean sheets, Wi-Fi, and a fridge full of beer that I'll regret offering." I hesitated, but then I took the key. I don't remember the drive to her place. It's a blur of stoplights and numb fingers gripping the wheel too tight. When I got inside, I dropped my backpack at the door and sank into her couch like a man twice my age. The place smelled like sandalwood and vanilla lotion. Everything was quiet, except for the hum of her old fridge and the occasional creak of the floor settling. I stared at the ceiling and told myself this was temporary, that I'd figure it out in the morning. But the truth was, I didn't want to sleep. Because if I did, I'd dream of her. And in my dreams, she'd still love me. Shall I continue with part 4? Absolutely. Here is part 4 of the story, even longer, more layered, and deeply intriguing. It continues with Curtis's emotional unraveling as he settles into Marla's apartment, but discovers that his wife's betrayal goes even deeper than he thought. The pacing is intense, the writing is in paragraph form, and everything remains within YouTube's guidelines. Part 4. Her email synced to this laptop, and I shouldn't have looked. The first night at Marla's apartment was a blur of half-sipped beer, blank stares at the ceiling, and dozens of unfinished thoughts piling up in the corners of my brain. I didn't cry. I thought I would, but nothing came out. Just silence, exhaustion, and the slow, sinking realization that I wasn't going home. That home wasn't mine anymore. It belonged to someone else now, someone who wore my socks and drank from my mug and touched her in ways I wasn't allowed to imagine. The next morning, I woke up on her couch, my neck twisted at a brutal angle, and for a brief, blissful second, I forgot. I looked at the ceiling fan and thought I was in our living room. But then I saw the dusty bookshelf full of Marla's psychology books and remembered everything in one suffocating rush. I made coffee and stared out the window for an hour. Didn't eat. Couldn't. My stomach felt like it had been replaced with wet cement. Then I noticed the laptop. It was Marla's old MacBook. She'd left it open on the kitchen counter with a sticky note that said, "Use whatever you need." Seriously. Reset your passwords. I wasn't planning to. But I sat down, mostly out of boredom or habit, and opened the browser. And that's when I saw the tab. It was already logged into an email account. Not Marla's. Lorna's. Apparently, she'd used Marla's laptop to check her email and never signed out. I shouldn't have looked. I told myself not to. I told myself this was a line I didn't want to cross. But I crossed it anyway. It wasn't just curiosity. It was desperation. The need to understand. To fill in the sickening blanks she left in my head when she said, "I didn't plan it like this," and then walked away without blinking. I clicked on the inbox. There were unread emails. From him. From Jude. Subject lines like, "Last night was electric. Can't stop thinking about you. He'll break soon. Just give it time." My hands started shaking. I clicked one open. It was dated 2 months ago. "You're doing the right thing. He doesn't see you. Not the real you. He's just there. Lorna. Like furniture. You deserve fireworks, not flickering light bulbs. Let's make a plan. No more waiting. Furniture." He called me furniture. I read more. I devoured every line like poison, each word sinking deeper and deeper until I thought I'd throw up right there on Marla's floor. These weren't love letters. These were blueprints. Conversations about when to introduce him to our space, how to make me believe everything was still normal, how long it would take for me to mentally detach. She planned my detachment like it was a business strategy. The worst part wasn't the words. It was the tone. They were laughing. Laughing at me. There was one email that broke me. It was from Lorna, for weeks ago. Just 2 lines. "He's still trying. He made lasagna last night. Poor guy even folded the napkins. It's almost sad." I stared at that line until the letters blurred together. I remembered that night. The way I paced. The way I checked the oven 100 times. How proud I was to surprise her with something warm. Something homemade. She called it almost sad. I closed the laptop and just sat there, trying to breathe. But everything in my chest felt like it was collapsing inward. My own wife had treated me like a placeholder. A stepping stone. A doormat with a checking account. I opened my phone to block her, but my hand hovered. I wanted to call her. To scream. To beg. To ask why. But I didn't. Because now I knew she'd already told him everything. And worse, she'd mocked it. That night, I couldn't sit still. I walked around the block 5 times. Past the same rusted mailbox over and over. I kept thinking, who else knows? How long has this been her secret entertainment? When I got back to the apartment, I found a manila envelope on the welcome mat. No name. No return address. Just one word on the front. Curtis. I froze. Picked it up. Brought it inside. Locked the door. Inside were photos. Photos of her. And him. At restaurants. In our backyard. In the car she said had electrical issues the night she never came home. And one photo of her, in our bedroom, wearing my flannel shirt, straddling him, flipping off the camera with a smile. My heart didn't break. It folded. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like Curtis anymore. I felt like a stranger looking at the ruins of someone else's life. But something inside me, something tired and sore and newly born, whispered a single thought that would change everything. She wanted you erased. Don't give her the satisfaction. Would you like to continue with part 5? Of course. Here is part 5, written longer and more gripping than before, fully in paragraph form, and entirely original, unlike anything previously written. Curtis's descent continues, but now a new thread appears. Someone knows more than they should, and they're not finished revealing the truth. Part 5. The envelope wasn't the last gift. Someone wants me to see everything. The pictures from the envelope haunted me. I laid them out across Marla's coffee table like a puzzle, one I didn't want to solve, but couldn't look away from. The angle of the shots, the clarity, the timing, these weren't careless phone snaps. They were methodical, precise. Someone had been following them, watching them, waiting for the right moment to let me know just how much I'd missed. I tried to convince myself it was some bitter friend of hers. Maybe someone who disapproved of Jude, who thought I deserved to know. But the photos said otherwise. They weren't just about exposure. They were about humiliation. Every image was a scalpel, cutting deeper, sharper, cleaner. And the handwriting on the envelope, block letters, almost too neat. Not rushed, not angry. Intentional. I stayed awake most of the night again, barely moving, barely blinking. I kept thinking about that line from Jude's email. He'll break soon. Just give it time. They wanted me broken, shattered into something easy to dismiss. I think part of them expected me to vanish quietly. Let them have the house, the memories, the life. As if I were just some temporary inconvenience they could pack away like an old box of decorations. But I was still here. Barely breathing, yes. But here. The next morning, I stepped out to grab coffee and try to reset my thoughts. Marla had left a note saying she'd be gone for the weekend, and to please water the plants and not spiral too hard. I smiled at that. She meant well, but spiraling was all I had left. When I returned, there was a second envelope waiting. Same block letters. No postage. Just tucked neatly under the apartment door like a signature on a threat. This time, there was no name. Just a single word written across the top. Listen. Inside was a flash drive. No note. No explanation. Just that tiny piece of plastic and metal sitting in the center of the manila paper like a ticking bomb. I didn't hesitate. I should have, but I didn't. I plugged it into Marla's laptop and waited. One folder. Labeled Curtis for your eyes. Inside, 3 audio files and a Word document named TuesdayPlan.docs. I opened the document first. My skin turned cold. It was a script. Literally, a script. Like something from a theater production. Dialogue between Jude and Lorna. Lines. Stage directions. Notes on facial expressions. Hello. He'll ask what this is. Laugh. Soften him. Stay seated. Jude. Use his name a lot. Sounds intimate. Keep tone light. Hello. If he starts to cry, do not touch him. Distance equals confirmation. It was a blueprint for my breakdown. They choreographed my confusion. My pain. They built an entire fake narrative for the evening she brought him to the house. I scrolled further. Hello. Bring wine. Same brand as our anniversary, it'll scramble him. Jude. If he brings up the lasagna, say it was undercooked. I slammed the laptop shut so hard the screen flickered. My heart was racing. My hands were numb. They used our history, my attempts at love, like weapons. I paced for a full 10 minutes, trying not to scream, trying not to cry. Then I remembered the audio files. The first one was labeled bedroom01.mp3. I pressed play. Their voices. Clear. Too clear. Like it was recorded from inside the room. Jude, do you think he suspects anything? Lorna, laughing, he suspects everything and nothing. That's the magic of Curtis. I pressed pause and stared at the screen like it might disappear. The voice I loved. The laugh I memorized. Twisted. Weaponized. I played the second. Lorna, once he finds the toothbrush, he'll spiral. He always overthinks small things. Jude, you want me to leave it next to his again? Lorna, definitely. It'll confuse him. He'll doubt himself. They were toying with me. Strategically planting chaos. Turning my own kindness, my routines, into mind games. This wasn't cheating. It was psychological dismantling. The third file was the shortest. Just Lorna's voice. Whispering. If you're listening to this, Curtis. I guess someone spilled the beans. Don't act like you didn't see this coming. You made it so easy. But hey, at least you got a front row seat to your own failure. I ripped the flash drive from the laptop and flung it across the room. It clattered against the wall and bounced into the corner, like a bug skittering into darkness. I sat down, elbows on my knees, and realized I wasn't just betrayed. I was hunted. Whoever delivered these envelopes, they weren't just trying to inform me. They were escalating something. Feeding me information, slowly, deliberately. They wanted me angry. They wanted me awake. But why? And how long had they been watching? That's when my phone vibrated. No name. Just a message. You're almost there. Next drop comes tomorrow. Be ready. Would you like me to continue with part 6? Absolutely. Here is part 6, written even longer, entirely in paragraph format, and with a strong dose of intrigue, paranoia, and emotional weight. This chapter takes the story in an even darker, more mysterious direction, while still staying grounded, whiny, and YouTube compliant. No cliches, no repetition. This is wholly original and unlike anything before. Part 6. I was being watched too, but not just by them. I didn't sleep. Again. The message rattled inside my brain like a steel marble in an empty jar. You're almost there. Next drop comes tomorrow. Be ready. The way it was phrased, casual, like it was a scavenger hunt, made it worse. This wasn't just someone feeding me dirt. This was someone enjoying it. I sat there in Marla's living room with the curtains drawn tight, the doors locked, every noise outside making me flinch like a hunted animal. By noon, I convinced myself it was all a setup, that maybe Lorna and Jude were behind the envelopes too, some elaborate campaign to push me to the edge. Break me completely so they could frame me as unstable, erase me from the picture legally and emotionally. They had already orchestrated conversations, moods, even my reactions like a play. So what was stopping them from doing this too? But that theory cracked when I checked my email. There was a message from a burner address. No name, no subject line, just a single photo attachment and one sentence. You missed more than you think. The photo was from 2 weeks ago. I was in it, sitting on my front porch, holding a grocery bag in one hand and unlocking the door with the other. A completely mundane moment, except it had been taken from across the street, through the passenger side mirror of a parked car. The timestamp in the corner? 6:13 p.m. And I remembered exactly what day that was. I had picked up dinner after work. Thai food, green curry for me, Patsy EW for her. She said she had a headache and didn't want to eat, so I ended up sitting alone at the kitchen table, scrolling my phone while the food went cold. She wasn't sick. She just didn't want to sit across from me. But someone else had been watching, not her, not Jude. Someone else. And now they wanted me to know. I paced the apartment for hours after that. Tried calling Marla, no answer. I thought about going to the police, but what would I even say? Hi, someone sent me a flash drive of my cheating wife mocking me, then took a photo of me buying noodles. They'd probably offer me a pamphlet and a coffee and tell me to breathe deeply. Then, around 3:45 p.m., there was a knock at the door. I didn't open it right away. I waited, watched through the peephole. Nothing. Another knock. Then the sound of something sliding under the door. A padded envelope. No return address. The same stiff, clean handwriting on the label. Curtis, final clue before the meeting. I picked it up like it might explode. Inside wasn't a letter. No flash drive. No photos. Just a single hotel key card. Room 212. Glenroe Inn. I knew the place. Cheap. Half renovated. Mostly used by traveling salesmen and cheating spouses. It had a bad reputation, paper-thin walls, flickering hallway lights, the kind of lobby that smells like burned coffee and carpet glue. There was a sticky note stuck to the card. Tonight. 9 p.m. Come alone. Bring nothing. Every part of me screamed, don't go. But I was already driving before I even realized I grabbed the keys. The Glenroe Inn sat off the main road, tucked behind a sad-looking strip mall and a shuttered gas station. The parking lot was mostly empty. The lights above buzzed like hornets. I parked near the edge and waited in the car until my watch read 8:59. Then I got out, walked into the lobby, and told the man at the front desk I was here for room 212. He didn't blink. Just handed me a clipboard to sign and nodded toward the stairs. Second floor. Into the hall. The carpet grew more stained with every step. I passed flickering sconces and vending machines that wheezed when I walked by. And when I finally reached the door, I hesitated. Then I swiped the key. The green light flashed. I opened it slowly. Inside was nothing. No people. No music. Just dim lamplight and the smell of stale linens. A queen bed. A chair. A desk. And on the desk, a burner phone. It lit up the second I stepped inside. Unknown caller. I answered. A voice, low and unidentifiable, filtered through the speaker like it was wrapped in gravel. Curtis. Don't talk. Just listen. I froze. The voice continued. You're part of something bigger than a love triangle. They've done this before. You're not the first. I couldn't breathe. They pick weak men. Quiet men. Ones who won't fight back. They test boundaries. Collect reactions. It's a game to them, a game for profit. My legs buckled, and I sat down on the bed. What do you mean profit? I whispered. The voice ignored me. Check under the mattress. I hesitated, then pulled up the edge of the mattress. Tucked beneath it, a manila folder. Inside, court documents. Screenshots. Printouts of messages between Lorna and someone else. Not Jude. Another man. Months before I even knew about Jude. The last page of the folder was a bank statement. An account under her name. Frequent transfers labeled consulting fee. Monthly. Regular. Large. Tens of thousands of dollars. The voice on the phone came again. They don't just break hearts. They sell the wreckage. She's part of it. Jude too. And now you're their latest chapter. The call ended. Silence. Just me. A folder. A phone. A cheap room with buzzing lights. And a truth that didn't fit into any box I knew how to carry. I sat there for what felt like hours, staring at the wall, unable to process any of it. But somewhere inside me, something finally cracked. This wasn't just betrayal. It was business. And I was the product. Would you like me to continue with part 7? Absolutely. Here's part 7. Even longer, darker, and more emotionally gripping. It expands the mystery while deepening Curtis's descent into betrayal, confusion, and now a dawning awareness that he's not just the victim of an affair, but a carefully orchestrated scheme. Every paragraph has weight. Every revelation tightens the noose. And this part, like the others, is entirely original, written in flowing paragraph form, and completely within YouTube's rules. Part 7. She wasn't just cheating. She was filming me too. I left the Glenroe Inn with the folder shoved under my arm like it might burn me. My head felt full of static. I didn't even remember walking to the car. I just remember sitting in the driver's seat, door open, the cold air stinging my skin as the voice on that burner phone kept echoing in my skull. They don't just break hearts. They sell the wreckage. And now it made sense. The emails. The scripted dinner. The psychological chess game they'd played in my own house. It was never about falling out of love. It was about performance. About control. About extraction. I drove around aimlessly for hours, crossing neighborhoods I hadn't seen in years, passing houses that looked like they belonged in someone else's memory. I didn't want to go back to Marla's. Not yet. I needed space. Silence. Somewhere I could fall apart without an audience. Around 2 a.m., I parked outside an old rest stop by the highway, the kind with broken vending machines and flickering blue lights that attract more moths than travelers. I sat on a picnic bench behind the building, alone with my thoughts and the manila folder. That's when I did something I hadn't done since this all began. I opened my notes app and started typing. I didn't write a rant, not a message to her, not a letter to myself. I just started listing facts, trying to pin something solid in a world that kept shifting beneath me. Lorna had an affair with Jude. Jude was not the first. The previous man disappeared from her texts the week she started acting distant. Multiple emails revealed they planned my emotional breakdown. Someone is watching me. That someone knows more than anyone should. There is money. A lot of money. Consulting fees. There is an entire network. I stopped at that last line and just stared at the word. Network. I didn't know what it meant exactly, but it scared me more than anything else. This wasn't just about one woman cheating. This was architecture. Strategy. People behind people behind people. And the more I replayed everything I'd seen and read, the more I started to realize just how deep it ran. When I finally drove back to Marla's place, the sun was beginning to rise. I stepped into the apartment, tossed the folder onto the counter, and collapsed on the couch. I didn't even take off my shoes. I closed my eyes for what felt like 5 seconds, and when I opened them, it was noon. Marla was standing over me. She looked pale, tense. She held her phone out toward me like it was poisoned. Curtis, what the hell is this? It was a video of me, sitting on the couch in her apartment, crying, shouting, talking to myself. At night. From 2 days ago. I watched in horror as the footage continued. A perfect angle of me digging through the manila envelope, pacing, whispering, even standing in the mirror staring at my own reflection like I didn't recognize it. My voice trembled. Where did this come from? It was sent to my inbox. No name. Just a link to a private video platform. And, Curtis, it's not the only one. She pulled up another. And another. Different nights. Different shirts. Different angles. One from the kitchen. One from the shower hallway. One while I slept. Someone had placed hidden cameras inside her apartment. I felt sick. I staggered back from the phone like it had just bitten me. They've been filming me? I whispered. Marla's eyes filled with tears. I checked the apartment. I found 2 pinhole cams in the living room. Another behind the mirror. And one in the vent above the shower. A hollow sound came from my chest. Not quite a sob. Not quite a scream. She grabbed my shoulders. This isn't just about Lorna. Someone's setting you up. Or studying you. Or something. But you can't stay here anymore. You need to go. I nodded, numb. My heart was thudding so loud I couldn't hear myself think. I packed what little I had, grabbed the burner phone, the envelope, the flash drive, everything. I didn't say goodbye. I couldn't. I drove for hours with no destination, finally stopping at a highway motel 30 miles outside the city. I paid in cash. Used a fake name. It wasn't paranoia anymore. It was survival. That night, I locked the door, closed the blinds, unplugged the TV, and sat in the middle of the room, knees to my chest. I didn't eat. I didn't drink. I stared at the walls, waiting for the next envelope, the next voice, the next piece of the game. And just after midnight, it came. A knock. Not a loud one. Not rushed. A soft, deliberate knock. I approached the door slowly. No one was there. Just a white envelope taped to the peephole. It read, "They filmed you, but now you'll film her." Inside was a new phone and a GPS location. Tomorrow, I would find out where she was hiding the truth. Would you like me to continue with part 8, the final part? Absolutely. Here's part 8, the grand finale, written in the same rich, paragraph-style format, slightly longer than before, and ending with a powerful but positive resolution. This conclusion honors the build-up, delivers an emotional payoff, and provides closure, while still staying entirely within YouTube's guidelines. Curtis doesn't just survive, he reclaims his story. Part 8. I walked into the room they told me about, and finally took my life back. The GPS coordinates led me to a quiet suburban neighborhood 3 towns over. Clean streets. Perfect hedges. The kind of place where people still wave at each other and ask about lawn care. It was almost offensively normal. I double-checked the map 4 times. I kept thinking, this can't be it. But the pin never moved. House 1427. White shutters. A red mailbox. And a black SUV parked out front. The same model I remembered seeing parked outside our home 3 weeks ago, the night she told me she was visiting a friend from college. I parked at the corner and walked the rest of the way. The air was still. Too still. Not even the birds were making noise. When I reached the front door, I found a key already waiting in the mailbox. No note. Just a plain silver key taped to the inside wall with a yellow sticky under it. You're ready. Go in. Camera's on. I stepped inside. No alarm. No creak. Just cold air and silence. The house wasn't empty. It was furnished expensively. Cream couches. Marble countertops. The kind of aesthetic that says neutral rich. Everything smelled faintly like her perfume. I moved carefully, scanning every angle. Then I heard it. A voice. From upstairs. Familiar. Too familiar. I crept up the stairs, one slow step at a time, until I reached the landing. A door was cracked open at the end of the hall. Inside, Lorna. She sat on a small sofa, legs tucked under her, wearing leggings and an oversized sweatshirt. She was laughing into a webcam mounted on a sleek tripod. Her voice, that same tone she used when mocking me behind my back, bounced through the room like static. And once he cried in the bathroom, I knew we had him. Jude said we should wait, but I figured we could get another week of footage before he snapped. My stomach turned. Another voice chimed in digital. Over a call. Some man. Not Jude. Good stuff. Real good. Upload the mirror scene by Friday. That one's gold. She grinned. You'll have it tonight. I stepped into the room without knocking. Her eyes lifted. At first, confusion. Then shock. Then that awful, twitchy little smile she always used when she knew she was caught. Well, she said, blinking. Guess you found the curtain. I tore it down, I said quietly. And the stage with it. She stood up, slowly, like I was a wild animal she needed to soothe. Curtis, listen. No. I held up the burner phone. One click, and her voice, every vile line, began to play on speaker. Her smirk faltered. Then I pulled out the flash drive. Then the printed emails. Then the folder. I have everything, I said. Every lie. Every laugh. Every transfer. She sat down. Hard. For once, she looked small. Curtis. I didn't mean for it to be this cruel. You were. Easy to fool? Easy to hurt? Easy to sell? I stepped forward. You filmed me crying. You let them turn my breakdown into content. But now, they'll see yours. And that's when I turned the phone camera toward her. Live. She didn't move. She didn't run. She just stared at the red recording light, lips parted, breath quick. I'm not here to ruin you, Lorna. You did that yourself, I said. Then I walked out. I left the door wide open. Left her with the camera, the truth, and the weight of everything she thought I'd never be strong enough to carry. I drove straight to a lawyer. Not mine. One that had been anonymously recommended in a message from the burner phone weeks earlier. Turns out, someone else had gone through this before and survived it. In less than 48 hours, I filed for divorce. Froze the accounts. Secured all the footage. The law was on my side now. So was reality. Weeks passed. Marla let me crash on her couch again, but only temporarily, she said, before shoving a lease agreement into my hand for a modest apartment 5 blocks from her place. Privacy is healthy, she told me, but dinner once a week is non-negotiable. I started therapy. Started writing again. I got a job offer from a nonprofit that had seen my case through the media attention that followed. They wanted me to help build digital safety resources for emotional abuse survivors. Apparently, people have been watching my story after all, not to laugh, but to learn. And me? I didn't just survive. I rebuilt. The man who once sat on the curb holding a bag of cold lasagna had disappeared. In his place was someone else. Someone still scarred, still fragile, still learning to trust again. But whole and free. The end. White heavy checkmark. Would you like a powerful YouTube-style title, thumbnail text, or a description for this story?